and welcome to Women in Workforce, a series celebrating capital area workforce development. I'm Carrie Rosingana, and I serve as the CEO for Capital Area Michigan Works here in the greater Lansing, Michigan area. I'll be your host as we bring together women in positions of leadership to shine a spotlight on their workforce impacts, while also talking about and addressing the disparities and challenges that are unique to women in the workforce.
And I am Kate Snyder. I am the CEO of Piper & Gold Public Relations, and I'll be joining Carrie each episode as co-host. So after decades of friendship and working alongside each other in workforce development, Carrie and I really wanted to create this series to be able to not only highlight the contributions of the women in our workforce and that they've had on the region through their professional impacts, but also to talk about workforce development as a whole, which is something that a lot of people don't understand. But really, the biggest part of this was about creating a platform for discussion and a place where women can come together and talk about some of those unique disparities that we face professionally, and to really be able to come together as fellow female leaders who get it, with other people who just get it, because those pressures and responsibilities hit us differently, and we often keep that very quiet, and it hurts. So
each episode, we'll host a roundtable type discussion with fellow community leaders. And together, today, we're at Risky Studios here in East Lansing, Michigan, and we're so grateful that you've chosen to join us. So let's dive right in, Kate.
Yeah, all right. So our first segment is called, This Could Be a Whole Episode. Because we know that when we get phenomenal, talented, smart female leaders together, our bios alone could fill an entire episode, which is why instead of bios and full introductions, we are asking you to introduce yourselves by summing up your professional biography in one sentence. And then we're asking you to help us see behind the bio. So we're asking you to share a single sentence of what you want people to know and understand about you that we don't read in that bio. What is it that people don't see? So you can be as candid, as personal, as vulnerable as you want to be, but you also don't have to be. Some of us don't want to put that out there, and that is completely fine. What we want to do is normalize being human as a leader, and that you get to choose if you want to talk about, all the personal stuff, or if that is off limits for you.
Yeah, and so I'll just give an example a little bit. I already shared I'm the CEO at Capital Area Michigan Works, but what people might not know behind the scenes and behind the bio is I am married. I've been married to my high school sweetheart for decades. I am a mother of a really, really precocious 9-year-old girl who I love to death. I also am a sister and a daughter and an aunt, and I'm really proud of those titles just as much as I'm proud of my professional title that I have at Capital Area Michigan Works. So first up, I get to do the first introduction, and I couldn't be more excited to welcome my friend and my colleague, Janet Lillie, Assistant Vice President of Community Relations at Michigan State University. Go Green!
Go White!
And a member of our Workforce Development Board at my agency, Capital Area Michigan Works. So Janet, you get to be first to share your one-sentence bio.
So I'm going to start with a run-on sentence, as
You're
long as
okay.
imperfection is okay.
It is.
I'd say sales, education. These are different things that I've done. So sales, education, economic development, all wrapped into currently now what I call myself is a Sherpa to help people navigate MSU, and then also to help MSU leaders navigate the local community. So Sherpa sums it up.
I recently went on a Mount Everest kick. I get onto weird, that's going to be my behind the bio for anyone that listens to this episode. My weird behind the bio is that I go onto these weird kicks where I learn everything I can about like
Everything.
Maoist China or Mount Everest. And I learned that Sherpas are both an ethnicity and a commonly used term for mountain workers. Sherpa with a lowercase s is the mountain workers. Sherpa with an uppercase s is the ethnicity. Many lowercase s Sherpa mountain workers are the Sherpa ethnicity, but not exclusively. And there is a moving trend to call Sherpas mountain workers.
So for all of you joining us, you're learning as
Welcome.
we're talking today.
Education.
So I consider myself a guide. Lowercase g, just to be real clear.
That was my tactful DEI lesson, but not tactful because I'm also on the spectrum. So people skills aren't my strong suit.
So Janet, is there anything behind the bio that you'd want to share?
Sure, I'm much like you. Other aspects of my life, I think things that have been very formative for me would be a youngest of 6, and so I had the benefit of being an only child because I was the way youngest of 6, and also had the benefit of a very large family, and I had parents who were actively involved in both seeking advanced degrees as well as being involved in their community. Very proud to be a wife, a best friend of my spouse as well, a mother to a fabulous son and a fabulous dog. So, that's the scope of the immediate family in the local area.
And can I add about Janet just for everybody's knowledge? But like, I know so many women who consider you like #goals.
Oh, wow.
And myself included. Like, we went out once at Big B, and you probably don't realize what a humongous impact you had on me that day talking about being an only child parent. And I know that I share the room with a couple of other only child parents here. I think about 4 of us are only child parents. And like, that in and of itself has a stigma. And like the way you talked about it and the guilt-free way that you addressed that and like the counsel that you gave me, I still remember that conversation when Wilson's like, why don't any other kids live in our house? And I'm like, well, that is a very conscious decision we made to be able to.
After we met you. Oh,
well, kind of. So, yeah, he was the reverse. It was like, we will never get a baby that sleeps through the night again. Like, that will never happen. We dodged that. We're good.
Well, thank you. That is very generous and very kind of you. Thank you.
I know I think basically every woman in their like 30s or 40s I've ever talked to that has met you is like, I want to be here when I grow up. And like, you're like 5 years older than us. And yeah, we still want to be here when you grow up.
But it's just because you're so kind and gracious.
You really are.
You guys are awesome. So
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for not recognizing my true age. I appreciate it.
Got you.
That's sacred here.
Yeah, no one has to talk about that. Okay, I'm next. And I get to introduce Amber Clark, who I'm very excited to have here, the Neighborhoods and Economic Development Director with Meridian Township, and also a former broadcast journalist, PR world person, which I just think is amazing because that job right there is
hard.
So, can you share your one sentence? I just shared your bio, sorry. Can you share your one sentence bio and what's behind that bio?
So Neighborhoods and Economic Development for Meridian Township, neighbor to East Lansing. Behind that bio, Janet Lillie gave me my degree. And I thank her all the time. And she always like does this. So she's like, Amber, you earned that. I'm like, you don't. As a sidebar, my father was sick as like all of my life. And so he passed right after graduation. I graduated in 2006. I'm from Midland, so I know a lot about. Breina and I are from the same community of engineers. We can build anything. And my mom worked for Dow, and she got very sick when I started at MSU, and she passed within my first semester. And so MSU is a very emotional coming of age story for me. And so when I say I love my green and white and how much my degree means to me, and that you are a person that was able to give it to me, and then now I can sit in a room with you. And then when I graduated, everyone's like, have you ever heard of Piper and Gold? Like, Katie's like taking it there. And I'm like, if I could only get her to know who I am. And there were some people that I interned with at Capital Area District Libraries that ended up coming to you. And I just remember thinking, like, the example, it was just never stop, never quit moving, never, don't give up on yourself, that you really know who yourself are. So that's a long sentence. It's a long sentence, but yes, it is a wonderful opportunity for me to bring my talent back to the Lansing region. I have a communications major. Child. I like to say I have 2 children because my husband is kind of a child. We're raising each other. A young son.
Sure many of us can relate to
that. Right.
My husband has to babysit me.
Right.
I am 100% the child.
The other child in the house,
if
right?
If it weren't for him, I would never eat. Or I would eat
Girls'
just
dinner.
like junk.
That's right.
Girls' dinner.
Partnerships. They make and break things.
Thanks, honey. Love you.
Love you. My family gave me the nickname Chocolate Chip, and so I like to say it's because I'm a semi-sweet morsel. And so that's who I am. That's in a nutshell.
Oh my God, so fantastic. This is going to be a great conversation. So our final guest today is Reena Pew with the Lansing Board of Water and Lights Government and Community Relations Manager, and as a fellow leadership team member of the Michigan Energy Workforce Development Consortium that you and I serve on together and have for a while. She also serves as the vice chair of the industry-led partnership of more than 50 representatives of the energy industry, workforce education, and veterans. And I know how much you contribute to that. You do a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And I couldn't be honestly more pleased that you and I have had the opportunity to work together for so many years now. It's pretty cool to have seen us progress through our different positions. And so thanks so much for joining us. So how about one sentence for your bio?
Yes, I was telling somebody about this earlier, and she was like, how long of a compounding sentence?
Right. As long as you want it to be.
I think we're good.
Right. But I was thinking about really the culmination of all of the jobs I've had, and I think, honestly, I could sum it up in one word, which is just relationships. All of my jobs have been about that. So my entire career is about 13 years from being in politics to nonprofits, to fundraising, and now in this role that is called community relations, which I would have never thought existed when I was in college because no one has this job. But that's what I do. At the core of what I do is relationships.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything behind the bio that you want to share?
Yeah, behind the bio, a couple things. Well, I am child-free by choice, which I think is
important to talk about.
It's definitely like a critical thing to talk about with other women because
so important.
it's weird to be in a room and be the only non-mom, but I am an aunt to one niece with one on the way, so I have my little girl tribe.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, I'm very excited about that. And the other thing behind the scenes is, I am passionate about Lansing. It is. I truly believe it. I live in downtown Lansing. I serve on a million boards. I go to, if there is an event, I'm going to be at it. I believe in supporting this community. I feel so passionately about making sure it succeeds. And I think that people my age don't appreciate this region enough, and I want it to be better. And I want to impress that upon others.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I love that you mentioned the child free by choice. Because every episode so far, we've had at least one female leader. I just did the mic punch. Sorry about that. One female leader at least one female leader who's child-free by choice. And it is so hard because so often when we talk to women about, behind the bio, outside of work, that, wife, mother, partner, those elements are what we center on. And it is so I think, we're starting to accept as a society it's not okay to ask women when they're going to have children. Mm-hmm. Yes. But that's we're saying it's understood. We don't say it because they might not be able to.
Right.
And as opposed to being cool with the fact that that's a choice and it is not mandatory. Absolutely. For value. And I love that you say child-free by choice.
Motherhood is a job, and you should have assumed that's going to be your job.
Right.
And you're well.
I just read a great book about this. It's called Without Children. I would recommend it. I can't remember the author, of course, right now, but that's what it was called. And it's about the history of women that are without children for whatever reason it may be. It's an incredibly interesting book because there's a long history of it. And we think of it as a very modern thing, but I don't think it is so much.
No, definitely.
have to check that one out.
Okay. We're going to get into our next segment called The 5 Questions. So we have 5 questions that focus on your career paths, workforce development, and more. And we want to talk through some of them because we know we will not get through all 5 questions. But we want to kind of get into the, what got you to where you're at, and then also those connections to workforce development. So, Carrie, start us off with our first question.
All right, it's a big one, but you could go many different directions. What are the biggest challenges you believe are unique to women or that women face in the workforce today? And really, it's open to anybody who wants to jump in to start the conversation and whatever comes to mind immediately. I will tell you from my perspective, I think something that continues to be challenging is that there's not enough women at the table who are in leadership positions. Even in this day and age, oftentimes I go to meetings and I feel like I am in the minority because I am in the minority sometimes in those seats. And that's why it's really important to have dialogue like this so that we can really lift up each other and the network that we actually have here in the greater Lansing area.
Right. Yeah, I would say support sometimes in mentorship, depending on the industry. I did a little stint in energy, right? And so there are some specific now associations and groups that are about women in energy and how you can be at an energy conference and you're like, okay, this is just me here. And you have to kind of learn comfortable, being comfortable, being uncomfortable is the saying, kind of like overlooking that in an area and in a group. But I think, having support, it's nice. You have friends, you have people who will talk to you about what to do in the job, in the corporate realm. But a lot of the times you're in different positions or in different industries. And so it's like, I'm reaching for that mentor of me, copy of me. So we got Janet. You
get to be mentor for all of us.
You get to kind of be the Lansing mentor for every woman in leadership. Sorry, take that crown. And so you do kind of have to sometimes look outside of your industry or within your organization for that person that's going to help you keep your head clear without over analyzing whatever might have just been said or whatever might have just been done.
Yeah.
Other big challenges you think are kind of unique to women or that women face in the workforce today?
I think getting into the room is a challenge still, making sure you're in the right rooms and that you get invited to the right meetings. I mean, there's oftentimes we still hear I work in a very male-dominated industry. I always have. Before this, I worked in the waste industry, obviously very male-dominated, and in politics, which is getting better, but, so just making sure that people remember to invite you to the room or asking to be in it. I think that you just have to ask sometimes because a lot of time people won't remember to ask. But I think unless we are there always represented at the table, it's never going to change.
Yeah. So just to add, I agree with all of that for sure. I guess one of the things, when I first hear that question, I actually reflect on, because I am been in the workforce professionally probably more than this group. So with that senior perspective, if you will. No, but it has actually, there are still challenges right now. When I hear that question, though, I reflect on how far we've come. So let me just take you back. So my first job was in sales with a corporate 500 company, right? So, but then I got my graduate degrees, and then worked at MSU. But even my first real job at MSU, at the time, the dean of the college required women to wear nylons.
I had to wear nylons at my first job.
So just hold
No
that
open.
Your face, Amber.
hold that thought for a second, because some of us might say, what the H are nylons? Right? Because we just changed the material a little bit and we call them tights, but really that's the original form of. And so when I look at that, and I completely agree with everything, but when I look at how far we've come for those with kids or other commitments, parents play a huge commitment, or if you're taking care of a sibling who has some additional needs or whatever, those external things, how far we've come as a workplace that understands that there might be, we've actually come really far. Now that said, I feel like, and I cut you off. I
No,
feel
you're
like
good.
listening is one of the challenges. How do you get people to listen? Because they might not always listen. And it is about getting in the room. It's about asking to be in that room. It's about lifting each other up, because I have seen women that hold other women back. I do not understand that in today's day and age. No. And then it's about how do you make yourself heard and understood. Right. So.
Yeah, no, I think what you say about that, like, oftentimes it feels like if we're acknowledging the progress, then we're somehow diminishing that we still have a long way to go. Right. But, you know, those two things can coexist, right? And my first job, I had to wear nylons, had to be suited, no open-toed shoes. Right. Like it was it was an all-female environment. So this was not gender norms that were being imposed by men. It was gender norms being imposed by women because of what they perceived as, how we could succeed. And something I've always struggled with, a big challenge for just me personally in the workforce, is that, having started my career more than 2 decades ago as like this little blonde white girl that was thought of as Barbie movie week, like my AOL handle, my very first AIM had Barbie in it. So, Barbie 6901 at AOL.com. That's real. So, like I was facing these stereotypes, and so I began to adopt like very masculine mannerisms. Right? Yep. And it's like, where does that where does that stop, and where do I begin? And like, were those always there and I just like let them out, or have I become that because I did it for so long? And just a lot of those kind of things, or it was like, if I was gonna get I would interrupt people all the time because it was the only time I could get heard. Right. And I still do it, and I still struggle with it, even though now I'm in a position of power where, like, I do get looked, Kate, what do you think of this? Why do you care what I think of it? I know nothing about this, but I will gladly give you an opinion. But yeah, so like what you said about how far we've come and kind of that evolution, but it sticks with you. Yeah. There's a lot of those, norms that are hard to break. In recording yesterday, I had dresses on, and I almost wore nylons because I felt incredibly uncomfortable being on camera with bare legs. Right.
Even having my arms out at work. Like, sometimes I get like a paranoia that's not okay anymore. And it's like, it's 2023, Breina. You can do it.
You can show your arms.
I like you say that. My husband, so sometimes I wear these they're like dress shorts. I know I'm getting crazy here with the outfits, but and my husband's like, "Are you sure that's professional?" And so there's this back and forth between us, and I'm like, "First, you're not even like a boss, dude. I don't even understand why you like talking about it. We don't even work in the same place." But I'm like, well, they're dressy, and I'm wearing a blazer, and I'm wearing a top, and like, no, when I go to a business meeting, or if I'm sitting down at my virtual meeting now, no one can see my dress shorts. I think it's fine. It's 92 degrees outside, and if I have to go and do something outside, I don't want to be sweating through everything. So it is. I think I take my dress as like my it's my power for it's like my moment to be like, okay, I'm going to try to change this up. I'm just going to see if somebody says something to me, and sometimes people will, like, oh, you can get away with that, like, yeah, I can totally get away with these dress shorts and this blazer, like, wearing it to work.
As if someone else has agency over
my closet, right?
To dress your body.
But I think it is, like you said, just repeating to ourselves like these are norms, and whether or not they actually have anything to do with your job and your performance and how you're presenting yourself. I'm not saying that I should be wearing like some crazy outfit to a funeral or something like that, but out of respect for yourself. But at the same time, if I can read the room and this still fits the room, this should be in the room.
It should be in the room. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes even if it doesn't technically fit the room, like,
still do it.
Okay.
Still do it.
Still do it.
So the three of you are like we've got some like workforce, economic development, community development mavens up in here. So what is the most surprising or unexpected, unknown, misunderstood way in which like your role or your kind of positions in the past directly tie into workforce development? I feel like it's such a misunderstood area. So can you just talk a little bit about like how does community relations, economic development, and neighborhood development, the university as a whole, and your job with community relations, like how do these things tie into workforce development?
It's kind of hard sometimes to get the connection, but I definitely think serving on the Michigan Energy Workforce Development Consortium board that I'm on with Carrie, I didn't know a lot about the workforce side of it. I did hiring or staffing as like my very, very first job out of college. So I had some like idea of how terrible it is to try to call people and get them to offer them a job and all of that type of stuff. But I just did not know like all of the things that went into it. And so I think serving on that board and knowing that a role in this is communicating what is out there. So communicating that in the energy industry, there are so many different jobs and there are so many different types of people. And that's what I try to do on that board. And then through my community relations work with Board of Water and Light, we are all about economic development. We want more people to move to this region. That's more jobs.
Absolutely.
That's larger businesses. That's more diverse workforce. So all of it kind of ties together, but it is hard on the surface to see the connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say to me it's all of these things are related. I have like a Venn diagram in my head where they're all overlapping with each other, and that,
It really does, though.
yeah, and that depending on where you're coming from that particular day and perspective, different circles might be larger. But you know, MSU is a very, very large employer in the region, and you know, so obviously economic development is important to us, and we also contribute in a number of different ways. But as an employer, we want employees to come here and enjoy the region and want to stay. I mean, we want that employee to come and stay for decades, quite frankly. And so the schools need to be strong. The daycares need to be available. We need to have parks and trails and fun things to do and embrace our river and stuff like that. And we like the fact that so much of the area, there's a lot of, maybe not enough housing, as we talk about that a lot, but a lot of diverse housing if you go really far out in the area. And so all of that fits together and all works together. So, you know, a vibrant community leads to one thing, and it's a domino effect, but anything can be the start of the domino, right? So
Absolutely.
It all relates.
Yeah. Janet said she's a guide at MSU, and I always think I'm like that, like World War I, like operator, like, okay, you need this, okay, yes, you need this thing, you need this thing, and that's what a lot of like what community relationship and relations and economic development is. It's like, I may not be the one to give you that thing that you need, but I'm supposed to know, I do know, or I can find that person at MSU, at BWL to be like, I don't know how to get you a low voltage distribution. I don't know, like, but somebody does. Right, you know, or, you know, I think my boss asked Janet something about MSU FCU, and I wanted to be like, I don't think that's what she does, but I'm just gonna, you know, she's just gonna
figure it out, right?
she'll take care of it, like, you know, like a little bit different arms. But I think it's nice to be the person that people can rely on, that they're like, okay, if she doesn't know, she will find the person. And so I when we got together and we sat on this couch, we're like, oh, you guys orchestrated the three of us to be here, people who are complete operators in their position, that they have to know enough about their organization and their entity. And so with workforce development, I don't necessarily hire anyone, but we get a new development a new housing development, and maybe it is focused on trying to hit the moderate to fixed income range for people. So then when someone can feel like I'm an approachable person, they can ask me that without me like jumping, you know, to a bunch of conclusions. But just giving them that information of like, here's where you need to go. Or a property owner that's like, hey, you know, I want to rezone this property. I'm like, that's way planning, but I can send you to the right person, or I can tell you what my vision is. I've had a couple of visions for a lot of different people's properties. I don't own any of this, but I would love to see this thing happen because it's going to be good for our region. It's going to provide diverse housing. It's going to add more connection to the community.
I also think all of you are representatives of the workforce system here in the capital area.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We talk about the fact that we want to be a diverse region. We want to encourage people to move here and to stay here after they finish college or whatever comes next in their lives. And having all of us here, I mean, we are the workforce and we are diverse in our experiences and our backgrounds and our educational levels. And we should celebrate that because workforce really connects to everything.
It really does.
Yes.
It does.
I feel like workforce development really is that like foundation of a healthy economy. If you cannot build a healthy, diverse, supported workforce, you have to have the infrastructure to support a workforce, and skills development and housing and schools. Like it is, without workforce, none of the other key pillars of an economy can happen.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I said that very declaratively, and that's a real big statement, so that might be super wrong. But it feels right in this moment, so we're going to go with
It's definitely right. It's definitely right.
Okay, we're going to transition into our next segment, which is called Facts and Feelings. I just, right before we came over here, was meeting with my business coach, and I was telling him, we based an entire segment on you because
You gave him a lot of credit.
well, kind of, because he always tells me facts, not feelings, Kate. Facts, not feelings. Facts, not feelings, because I am not an outwardly like touchy-feely emotive person, but on the inside, I got lots of swirling emotions of mostly anxiety, and so he always tells me facts, not feelings. What is the fact of this? Yes, the feeling, you're playing out the movie 10 years in advance. Like, what's the impact of that, butterfly farting going to be? But, like, look at the facts. And I was like, I've talked about you in the episode. So, Keith, this one's for you. But feelings are important. And there's something that, like, as women, there's huge stigma surrounding feelings in the workplace. So we want to look at the facts and the feelings in leadership. So we're going to share with you some related facts and ask you to tell us how that makes you feel. And we did not orchestrate this like workforce champions panel. Y'all just signed up for slots together. But in seeing who was going to be here today, we're going to talk about McKinsey and LeanIn.org's 2022 Women in the Workplace Report, and specifically women's representation in public sector employment. So, the facts. The Economic Policy Institute did some analysis. It shows that, on average, women make up a higher share of the public sector workforce, which is about hovering around 60% in recent years. Whereas in contrast, women typically make up about 46-47% of the total workforce, 45-46% of the private sector workforce. So this Women in Workplace report found women in the public and social sectors saw higher promotion rates than men. With 107 women for every 100 men promoted. And in the overall workforce, that's 87 women for every 100 men promoted. We also saw representation in the public and social sectors in like cabinet and departmental leader roles rise for women from 41% in 2021 to 53% in 2022. That's compared with 28% of women in equivalent roles across all sectors. So way more represented and growing at a higher rate. But one troubling trend, there's an unprecedented burnout rate among women leaders. It's getting worse. 2022 was the highest rates of attrition for women leaders, attrition by choice, since the report launched in 2015. And in 78% of organizations expect their managers to promote well-being, but only 48% train managers on minimizing burnout, including for themselves. So, women in public sector.
So Kate and I talk a lot about I am all emotions. Kate likes to stuff her emotions deep down inside of her. So I think it's
They have a little place they live.
They do. So I think it's appropriate maybe for me to just kick it off because I am all emotions and ask you, how does this feel? My initial thought when I heard this is a lack of surprise maybe because I think there are more women who go into public sector organizations, which could have a big part to play in the statistical data that you just quoted, Kate.
Yep.
But it also, also saddens me to hear that there's that strong of a burnout. Not surprising, but still very much saddens me and shows that there's a lot that needs to be done to address some of that. Those are my initial feelings on it. Anyone else? What are your thoughts when you hear that?
I thought the same thing about public sector. It's a lot of jobs that you think are more like women-centric, like even when you were talking about the energy industry earlier. I go to a lot of their conferences, and all of the women, like there'll be the women in energy breakfast. We'll all get together. It's everybody in communications. It's everybody in communications.
Exactly.
It's everybody in customer
HR.
service. There's no engineers. There's no CEOs. They're not representing that side of it. So I do think, yes, there's a lot of women in that area taking on roles that are really big. And if I had to guess, a lot of burnout is because people are taking on roles that are now 1 and 2 people's roles, or 1 and 2 and 3 people's roles. And I think because in the public sector, you've had to make a lot of cuts over the last couple of years because of COVID. So I could see those things being a correlation, and that does make me sad to see that it's not we don't see women representation in other roles in that sector.
It didn't surprise me either. I mean, I thought, this is great. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I think the roles, to your point, tend to be more helping-oriented roles.
Yeah,
we know
absolutely.
that, women do gravitate to those positions. I mean, but they also gravitate to being helpers as well. And so then that pulls on an extra burden.
Yes.
Right? So
It does.
Yes, absolutely. There was some additional data that I found when I was looking up these stats that substantiated what both of you just talked about, that did show that even though women are being promoted at higher rates, like still when you get to the upper echelons, they're underrepresented, which surprises no one because that's the case everywhere. But one of the other ones was, oh shoot, now I can't remember. It was about that dual role. And it was saying how now in public sector, DE&I is getting rolled into a lot of positions that are held by women, but they're not providing them with training or support on that. It's just like, here's this whole new discipline that you need to learn and grow other humans in on your own good luck.
Right. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Wearing so many hats. And I think, there's this statistic about women going after the things that they think that they're good at, right? Like, I know I can develop relationships. I know I can be helpful, and not challenging themselves to be like, well, actually I have this passion or I have this interest in something, maybe in engineering, maybe in building, and not like pushing themselves into that space that's a little bit uncomfortable. But I think when we're talking about this, I'm like, yes, women are leading in something. Yes, awesome. Like, more jobs. Yes. A little competitive spirit of mine. And then also like, that burnout feeling, because I am managing 5 boards and I don't really know even how I'm really doing that. And today I just got off of our small business development board, and they were like, well, Amber, weren't you on the marketing committee? And I was like, I don't know. Like, at this point, like, I don't even know how many hats I'm wearing. Like, I might be dropping the ball, and that might be a reason why there are women that are like, okay, I'm bowing out because I can't even keep my head straight, and I don't want to mislead people. I don't want to drop the ball for people.
Well, and I think about the last few years too with COVID, how much public sector employers have had in addition to what we had before. All of these additional funds, yay, that's great. And we're excited about that. But it's also new things that we have to add on. And that is exhausting sometimes. I think we probably can all relate to having days where you just run, meeting to meeting to meeting. There's no time to digest or to process in between, and that's a lot.
Right.
So what role can we as women, like this issue feels universal. I mean, let me be careful in saying that. This issue feels universal to women that are in a certain position of power and privilege. I think the burnout issue is probably universal to many, many, many women, particularly working women. But, for those of us that do have levels of power and privilege in those regards, if we're not going to take care of ourselves and we're not going to say no, what can we actively be doing to take care of other women or to prevent, not to toot my own horn, but also let's actually give ourselves credit sometimes when we do good things. I got asked if there was someone I thought would be good for a board I sit on, and I was like, Carrie'd be friggin' great. And then I was like, no, Carrie is exhausted. Carrie is on 14
I'm on 14 boards.
14 boards. Carrie does not need to be on another board. Right. And so I said to her, I think one of these two employees of yours would be great for this board, because I know you're on 14 already and you should not be on it. And so when I went and said, hey, I know you asked if we have board members in this regard. I think this organization would be great to be represented on the board, and these two people would be great options. I didn't even put her out there, right? So what are the other what are things we can be doing to help each other if we aren't going to help ourselves?
That's a very good example. I know in the Black community we talk about as far as developing our culture into a massive community and a massive understanding of how our culture is intertwined as Americans. The saying is, you send the elevator down, right? So you send the elevator down, you got to send the elevator down. So maybe it's not you. And I even said this today on the board meeting, maybe I'm not on the marketing committee. Maybe it's somebody, maybe it needs to be somebody else that hasn't ever had the opportunity before, because you don't know how they're going to, everybody's got their own light. Everybody has their own ability to shine. So just send them down.
I think, so a couple of things. One, I do think it's okay. We have to take care of ourselves. I mean, we might not be taking care of ourselves, but we do have to have an inventory of ourselves, some self-reflection, and find some ways to take care of ourselves, whatever that form might look like. And it is also okay on some circumstances. So if your boss says to do something, I wouldn't recommend saying no there. But there are some times that you can say, no, or just not yet. And so not yet or not now. I'm interested, but not now is a very nice way of saying no. And that's okay, but send the elevator down or send it over. I mean, so I've been on boards. In fact, I was president of this one. It was an international board. I was past president, then sat on the board for a while. But I intentionally, when my term was up, I could have upped for another term. I intentionally did not, so that someone else from my institution could do that. And, and I worked to make sure she could get on the board and have that position and be in that national opportunity in this organization. And so and there's other groups that I'm in. I'm not on 14 boards. But I am
tired. I don't.
But,
wow.
And so how do you look to make room for people to provide that opportunity for others, and then make sure they have the resources to be successful? Right. Because sometimes the other thing I would say, this is about boards, is not every board is run exceptionally well. Some are run really, really well. Don't worry,
experience.
But no, Carrie's board is run very, very well. No, as a board member, I will say. But if how do you help people so that they know how to be onboarded?
Right.
And how do you even help the board be better to help onboard people too? Because the onboarding is really critical for success.
Especially the further you get into your career, right? I've hit that point where 2+ decades of being about at the same level. Honestly, I forget what other people don't know and don't think to ask. And so recently I actually had a conversation with someone about board service, and I was like, you need to get off of doing boards and you need to get on to thinking boards, where you're there for your counsel, your mind. You are not there for your hands. You are there not to do the work of that organization. You are there to provide your expert counsel. And I had never even thought to say that before,
Right.
until they were telling me about like how much time goes into it, blah blah blah, and I was like, oh God, no. They were struggling with, should I quit this board or not? And I was like, get out. No, like we don't have time for that. That is not a well-run board. You need to get into service opportunities that do feed your soul, that do allow you to give back, but that are not, like, your mind is a huge value. You can busy work it up elsewhere, like having to do the dishes, but you shouldn't be having to stuff envelopes unless that's what you're choosing.
Right.
But there are machines that can do that for us. I love that. Okay. We are at our closing. So to close us out, we are going to share your biggest takeaways in 10 words or less. Either kind of like what you hope people will take away from this conversation today, or what you're going to take away from this conversation today.
And while you all are working on thinking about what those 10 keywords are, and I could see some of you writing things down as we talked, I just wanted to personally say thank you for being a part of this conversation. Kate and I, when we did our first sessions yesterday to record, we talked about this can't be it. Like, we have to do more of these, and we have to bring people together in different ways. And so that's what we want to look at doing. But I do want to say thank you to each of you. Janet, thank you so much for coming and representing MSU. Thank you. Breina, thank you so much for coming and representing the Lansing Board of Water and Light. And thank you so much, Amber, for coming and representing Meridian Township and the work that you do there. We're really appreciative of this community that we've built. And when I think about 10 words, 3 come to mind right away from this session. Community, collaboration, and passion are the things that I hear from each of you when you're speaking. So, Janet, do you have...
I have a few. I'm not going to do 10.
Okay.
Because I'm going to take those 3. I'm going to take those 3 and look at a few more that I wrote down. But along those same lines, I think relationships, Bree said that best, relationships really matter. But I guess the biggest thing that I would take away and also provide out is know yourself and invest in yourself, whether that means, just understanding your skills or what you can provide, or just investing in yourself to lift your own self up. But whether it's educating yourself on other things or just being involved. So, but investing in yourself is really important, and valuing yourself. And then knowing what you bring to the table, because all of us bring very special and different skills.
Absolutely.
And know what you bring and the value that provides that, that conversation or that project or initiative or whatever.
Thanks, Janet. Bree, how about you?
I think the biggest thing was the discussion about duality of being able to look back and say, like, times were definitely worse and they're a little bit better now, but not discount that. And I think that that's a good conversation to have when you're talking about women in different generations throughout the workforce, because there's a younger generation than us and they have a totally different experience than we do, and that doesn't discount ours or theirs. And so I think that was a really, really good takeaway for me and for the audience, for sure.
I would say I need to stay in this tribe. That was 7 words. I am very uplifted by women, and so I find myself continuing to find other strong women that, even if they are in a completely different industry, being able to pick their brain and just understand, what's driving them to continue their passion. It is inspiration for me. And then I ask them the questions of, like, well, what do you do when what do you do for calming yourself down? And, I've started to do a lot more like meditating and sound baths and like thinking about being in a room that's just like beautifully colored and well lit, and just like relinquishing all of that and to understand I'm not the only one so I need my tribe.
I think for me, this has been a great conversation. And own your awkwardness. Owning your awkwardness. Like, I still feel awkward that I said something about Sherpa, and now I'm gonna say maybe let's not call it tribe. Maybe let's use the word community, or sisterhood or something like that. But I feel really awkward saying those things, but it's worth it, right? Because as we move, you were talking about women that do actively hold other women down, and I don't think they're doing it on purpose. They're doing it because it's what they've been conditioned to do. They have no idea that they're not maliciously thinking, I will hold that woman down. They've been conditioned to believe if she succeeds, I cannot. Yeah. And I have to protect myself. I've worked so hard to get where I am, right? Like, so we don't sometimes then like say the hard things, but when we can have a presumption of positive intent, right? Like I have the utmost of respect, and I say it because I know each of you will now be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to say that one anymore. My bad. And like those kind of things. So I think like owning your awkwardness and sharing like what you uniquely know with other people and presuming that that's done with positive intent. Like we're doing it to help each other, and that women are inherently here to help one another. We are the helpers, and not to harm one another. And then I do think what you said, make room, beautiful. And then that meaningful personal impact. Like I had no idea until the first time that we sat down and met that you were like, I wanted to meet you. And I was like, wait, you would want to meet me? Like, why would you want to meet me? Like, I'm just me. Like, I'm not anything special, but like those personal impacts. And like, I mean, I truly do think so frequently about about our conversation as I'm parenting Wilson. Wow. And like, I just think like about like,
you never know.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you never know what impact you're gonna have on other people, and what's gonna hit them in a way that will stay with them for a very, very long time. So, so I think that it goes beyond professional impacts when we allow ourselves to go to those places. Relationships. So, okay, with that. On that note, I am Kate Snyder, and I'm the CEO of Piper & Gold Public Relations here in Lansing, in case you somehow forgot that.
And I'm Carrie Rosingana, the CEO of Capital Area Michigan Works, and we really can't wait to have another conversation and welcome some additional guests to our next session. Thank you all again for being a part of today.
Thank you.